going to be. Well, good afternoon, good evening, bienvenidos, one and all. I'm Sandy Yannone, your host of Cultivating Voices Live Poetry, and today it's a special event. It's our fourth reading of the month. It's a celebration of the 1 year anniversary of my book, The Glass Studio from Salmon Poetry. I am so thrilled to have absolutely assembled this amazing constellation of poets who are going to be joining me. They really are the show with poems from the Glass Studio. And before I tell you a little bit more about how we're going to proceed today, first of all, let me share also that Cultivating Voices Live Poetry is an international, intersectional, intergenerational Facebook group and reading series. We've been going since March of 2020, which means our 1 year anniversary for Cultivating Voices Live Poetry is coming up next month. I'll talk with you a little bit about that as at the end of the program today. But I want to thank all of you for being here today. Those of you here live in our Zoom studio, those of you watching live on Facebook, of course, and those of the hundreds of you that are devoted to watching the recordings, thanks to Don Krieger. I also want to thank those of you who joined us last week for our wild card open mic. And a special thanks to David Bridges, who was our guest host as I was performing in the Poetry Circus here in Seattle. Thanks to Lil Away and her amazing collection, Flying Trapeze Poems, which I do hope to bring to Cultivating Voices soon. I want to mention if you'd like to be a guest host for a future Cultivating Voices live poetry, sit in the chair that I sit in most weeks, feel free to email us at cvlivepoetry@gmail.com or contact me directly. We infrequently need guest hosts, but we do need them. And if you have kind of a hankering to do that, better we know that rather than us looking for folks. So please do. Well, as I said, today I am joined by such a starry constellation of poets. And I've actually, for a number of years, been trying to figure out what is a group of poets called. Sara, get ready for this one. I've decided to call a group of poets a Scrabble of poets. A Scrabble of poets. Yeah, in honor of the iconic word game, of course. Well, a year ago today, I was launching my book from Salmon Poetry, my second collection, The Glass Studio, at the Hot Shop at the Museum of Glass in Tacoma, Washington. We literally were reading poems about glass and its properties while glass artists were creating art objects behind us on the floor of their glass studio. It's been a really incredible year of readings in person and online with so many wonderful surprises and so many people that I've yearned to meet and people I didn't even know I would meet. And today's readers are joining me on our virtual stage with they all either blurbed the book, wrote a review of the book, read with me either online or in person at the Museum of Glass last February or in May at my hometown library in Old Saybrook, Connecticut. So I really want to thank all of you who've supported me in those ways, and of course to the editors who published the poems initially, and as well, how could I not thank my mentors, my teachers, and immense gratitude to the editor, the legendary Jessie Lendenny at Salmon Poetry, and designer Siobhan Hudson, who saw the cover image inside my father's larger stained glass piece that still hangs in the glass studio in Old Saybrook, Connecticut. And that's called The Beginnings of Time. Well, for today's reading, folks, you are going to hear mostly from our amazing guest readers, and each will read a poem or a selection of something they've chosen from the Glass Studio, as well as a selection of their own work. And we'll have a few special giveaways during the program. The order of the reading is loosely follows the order of the poems in the book, with the exception of the opening title poem, which I'll read. So if you're following along, I'll try to give you page numbers if you want to follow along. And with that, let's begin. I'm going to open with the one of four of the title poems to the Glass Studio. It was the original poem, the original title poem that I wrote. And I have to give credit to Ansley, who, when we were meeting, only weeks really after meeting, we started talking about the book, and she said, "You need more Glass Studio." And that's how the book ended up with four title poems, actually. So this is The Glass Studio. I must go back to that photograph of me, 14, on an early morning in my father's makeshift sweatshop on the unfinished second floor of my grandparents' house, leaning over beige glass squares arranged in a plaster-poured mold, my Red Sox cap cocked backwards like a trigger waiting for release, my left hand steadying the burning soldering iron while I push coiled snakes of lead into the iron's hot tip to melt them into quick silver seams, fusing those cut glass squares into translucently beautiful panes if I hold them up to the light, breaking through the second floor window. I sweat through this labor. I breathe in the noxious fumes. I wear no protective mask. My hot pink lungs slow burn towards death. Hour after hour, I run my hands like this, iron and lead, like over the seams of women's bodies it will take years for me to touch. I use the same precision to bring them full circle to where they become translucent. My father will teach me all this with squares of cut glass, not ever saying the word sex, without ever claiming to transfer the knowledge of how he broke my mother's body to create something sacred akin to a family. Downstairs, my grandfather returns from hours emptying glasses filled with Kentucky bourbon and ice, brings home his daily ragings like newspaper headlines, and breaks everything on the first floor. I sit up here on a metal stool in the Glass Studio, mute like a bird who has lost faith in song, soldering everything at my fingertips back into place faster than he can break her. My grandmother burns her hand occasionally on the coils of the stove while she makes his lunch. At the height of these humid summer afternoons, my father disappears before my grandfather returns home. He teaches me not to press the iron against any glass square in the mold for too long. He shows me how the iron-willed iron desires nothing in its intention to burn. So if left resting on the glass's skin, it will provoke an irrevocable wound. After hours inside of this sweat and burn, heat from the tip of the iron threatening to welt my skin with each beaded line, the fumes filling my lungs like my grandfather's cigarette smoke overtakes the living room where my grandparents sit in separate chairs after all his sodden threats and direct hits. I close up the studio, pushing the windows down hard and drawing the curtains like stitches. Turn off my iron, brush its tip in flux until it smokes clean. I whip down the stairs, where on the other side of the wall, my grandparents smolder into days' aftermath of broken glass. I pull the door tight to keep them inside, the brass doorknob hot in my palm. I run next door, up the stairs to my bedroom, strip my leadened clothes, my skin now a mix of sweat from labor and labored fear, and I pull on my bathing suit, ride my bike hard and fast away to the beach, lay down on the hot sand next to the beautiful girls on their striped towels on their backs, tanning themselves into womanhood, their new breasts coming in like delicate blown glass floats adrift in the sea and landing on the creamy skin of the shore, miraculously whole like art, like the women who've broken away from me, like the glass infused light leaves the hanging stained glass lamps I assemble through my teens in the illegal glass studio of my family's naive making. Well, folks, that is the title poem, one of four, but the original title poem from the Glass Studio. And now we're going to hear from Eamonn Lynskey, who's going to be reading The Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, dedicated to Kabby Mitchell, a colleague of mine from Evergreen, who passed he was born in 1956. He passed in 2017, and it's on page 20 if you're following along. Thank you so much, Eamonn.
Okay, this is really a great poem, and it's a great collection. It's absolutely saturated with the collection is absolutely saturated with the idea of glassmaking. It's very visceral and raw, many of the poems. But I picked this one because I suspect that people are going to take a lot of the other poems. This is one of the poems that is actually not about the glassmaking um, part of Sandy's work. It's called The Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, and it's just the one poem I will read. And as Sandy has just said, it's for Kabby Mitchell, whom I see. She died at 61, and which is, these days not a very advanced age. And it's that kind of lament poem. At the Quality Inn of Aurora and John, I greet an elder brother with a particular train cap on his head, a Pullman porter who has stepped out of time while we wait to ride the elevator with my grief and gratitude and whatever else he has brought from his travels. I can see how he punches tickets, memorizes routes and timetables in the way he cares for me at this moment. I tell him about you. The elevator opens, we step in, we rise up the spine of the hotel. And even though it's just the Quality Inn, nothing ornate or special or flashy, I think about how this unadorned Seattle box might transform into Charlie's great glass elevator and take me to the highest floor of the sky, just to be with you a bit longer, knowing I would need to return, not entirely sure why. The divine chose this timetable at this appointed hour, at this particular day, nestled inside this week, tucked inside the year, during this crazed century. Kabby at the Primo Grill 2 weeks ago on my last night before leaving for Limerick. We flirted at the bar with disaster. You reluctantly, when I suggested that I might not see you again if fate would choose to take me away. You, wide-eyed, incredulous, almost scolding. So I returned, and now you are gone. Strange. It will take the rest of my strange life to get used to this estrangement. Like meeting a train porter in front of a modest Quality Inn elevator who steps off on my floor and leads me down the hall to his hotel room door, stands with me there for half an hour, reciting from John 1, imploring me to consider how I am here and that you are now everywhere, as you always have been, with your moonlit eyes, incandescent smile. He stands there, a train porter on break, no stranger to me than the stranger I feel ready to know, like the first time I met you, 2 days after 9/11, while we ate a catered chicken lunch from the Southern Kitchen in Tacoma. Your hospitality that day never lost after all these years. He stands there in front of the Quality Inn door, room 223, never inviting me in. The train porter just opens his wallet, removes his business card, writes something on the back, and hands it to me as if it were a receipt, and sends me down the hall to find my room, where I fall into my feathered bed, sleep hard, and wake to the day's breaking news of your leaving, spreading across time and these cities you've inhabited, like a love train not entirely desperate to stay true to its scheduled departure. Later, back on campus in Olympia, my students and I marvel at the unannounced thunder for a full 2 hours. There is nothing else you can do after the emergency alert system promises hail. We wait. The hail does not come. My students turn in their reflections for the week, slightly disappointed. They leave. I walk across the campus alone, almost detouring to your office, and then drive home through the city, expecting your lightning to strike me dead. And I admit that I almost wish for this lightning bolt to strike rather than make it home, safely to go to bed, only to wake to my first day without you, wondering whether Grace can find me if I'm not at the Quality Inn in Seattle on John Street with the train porter, Brother Will from Breaking Bread Ministry, looking out for me, looking everywhere for you. Great poem. I think that's it. So thank you, Andy. Thank you for the book. The book is great and, full of great stuff. That's one of my favorites.
Thank you so much. That's Eamonn Lynskey. Eamonn, as with everyone else that's reading today, I'm going to be putting a very brief bio in the chat, and if they have a if they have a collection, I'll be putting a link to their collection in the chat as well. So, Eamonn wrote a really beautiful review of the Glass Studio. So I'm so grateful to have had you here and to have had Kabby here at the reading with us, my dear friend Kabby Mitchell. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next reader is Janet MacFadyen, and Janet is going to be reading one of the other title poems, one of the other Glass Studio title poems. It's on page 23, and I'm so grateful for Janet. She's like Eamonn, a salmon sibling, as well as she and I have had the joy to be able to do readings together during um, this first year of the collection, and so I'm really grateful for you setting up the readings and reading with me. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome, Sandy. I'm honored to be here. And so, yes, I'm reading The Glass Studio on page 23. And what I really like about this, I mean, I have a background in geology, so that anything that's dealing with elements, I'm very drawn to. And in addition to the glass, there is copper in every single stanza of this poem, except for one. I counted them. There's 19 references to copper. And I don't know, it's such a flow. So here we go. The Glass Studio. In the Copper Room in Limerick, on what should be called Copper Road, The low copper ceiling is held up by copper walls. They sing me their copper songs whenever I can be within them under copper ground. Last visit, Edward and I drank pint after coppery pint of treaty ale, so many coppery pints that we began to see our reflections in our makeshift hall of copper mirrors. Another night, another friend told me about her cancer, but didn't use that word, choosing instead to call it something more shimmery or burnished, like copper, while the candles amplified their messages against the copper walls. The copper room always feels familiar, like the press of copper foil between my fingers that I used to wrap pieces of hand-cut glass in my father's stained glass studio as a girl. Every now and then the copper foil would slice through my unsuspecting skin. My blood would ooze like a copper river until someone would bandage me, the blood drying to an even deeper copper hue. Every lamp in the studio was made this way: copper foil, silver solder, a toxic elixir of patina that muted the shine. People would buy their lamps to hang in their copper kitchens near their copper pans, but few knew the process to make each lamp as I did. Few knew that copper lay buried beneath the skin of the solder's seam, or of all that blood turned copper that went into the making of their coppery light. And I'm going to pair it with a poem of my own salmon book, State of Grass, that happened to come out probably within weeks of Sandy's. And this one also is runs with the kitchen and with essences and salt and things like that. It's called Feeding the Peat Stove. Oh, valve of my heart, firebox, ashtray, ash bucket, essence of peat, plant matter, bone. Everything incinerates into a smoky pitchiness so thick it comes off the fingers. This is how I heat the body and the hearth, nurse the smoldering like a baby, feed it or it dies. It has a great saltiness to it like blood, is a slow grieving for all my attempts at mothering, my frantic kitchenry, the saucepans and clattering. If there is no nourishment, if the stove neither heats nor cooks, then hunger boils the pot and the belly runs amok. The belly is the smelter that stirs and frets and finally ignites. I have done it again, set the house on fire with cold and neglect, wrap the fire blanket around and around myself, my children. Oh, this good house turned inside out, these hungry children, my good intentions. Where is the cook? Whose hand is on the ladle? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Janet. I look forward to more readings with you, of course. And I'm just going to give a little plug. Janet, first week of March, is going to be the featured poet on Kai Kagan's Wednesday night poetry out of Hot Springs, Arkansas. So if you're in the area, great opportunity. And of course, hopefully you can, those of you can also see us, hopefully us read together again in Western Massachusetts or Connecticut or Boston or wherever we wander and travel. Thank you. Beautiful. I love that poem of yours so much. Um, yeah. Again, folks, I'm populating those folks that are reading today that have books. I am putting their information in the chat for you. Please feel free to support them as you have so generously supported me. Well, speaking of a person who has supported me so beautifully, our next reader um, is Victoria Larkin. And Victoria and I have known each other a long time. She originally was a student of mine and a tutor at the Writing Center at the Evergreen State College. And we became friends through her journey as she became a teacher and educator. And um, she's going to be reading the poem In Case of Post-Election Emergency on page 47. And she read at the reading in Old Saybrook, Connecticut in May with us. Welcome.
Hi, thanks, Sandy. Yeah, it was great to read in that sweet library in Old Saybrook. It was really a beautiful experience. I chose this poem because it's fierce and I can't stop feeling fierce and freaked out right now. And I'm really glad that I get to read this again. This is what I picked to read in Old Saybrook as well. So here we go. In case of post-election emergency, the green, translucent bottle glistened in the sunlight as it careened past my left ear, then shattered on the asphalt, glass scattering like mice under siege by the neighborhood cat, or a jigsaw puzzle falling from its fallible box. The glass bottle, that broken afternoon on my driveway in Lincoln, Nebraska, somehow broke into me. You could shake me for years like a dropped thermos, hear the percussive internal bleeding, and discern that those scars doubled once as entry wounds, ushering that day into my DNA forever. And yet, how soon I forgot that the glass was still there, burrowed inside me as I keep shaking today. The illusion that the mercury was dropping its red spiked delirium to quell my fevered American heart. I'd rather the country put one of its outlaw guns to my head and pull the trigger than lever after lever behind a pleated plastic curtain all that election night, red on the map, screened through my bloodshot eyes when I told my body never to let me bleed like that again. And I regret that I can't keep my Pledge of Allegiance. And I regret that any rope cast my way slithers through my hands, burning red rivers like the poisonous black snake that bores through the Dakotas, threatening the land's indigenous skin and ancestral prayers. And where am I now? I can't find the one I love in a crowded hall when I most need a head to land on my shoulder, not a head riddled with bullets, dead and unthinking, not one or 49 blindsided at an Orlando dance club in June, not one or too many and counting, slabbed in county morgues with police bullets lodged in their backs. The weight of these dead is too much for my shoulder. And isn't this irrational? And isn't this granting a grand gift to fear? And now she who staunched my bleeding may feel the cold case need to stay away from my bed. And now any hand I extend to invite her closer feels nullified by 60 million pairs of eyes. They boycott my sequels. They steal my lunch money. They break my Partridge Family thermos in the back of the bus. And so what if all this sounds like overblown despair? If I can't kiss my way to shatter the glass sky without having the neighborhood kid throw a soda bottle at my head, if I can't crisscross every inch of this country that is her body, if I feel the loss of that freedom in broad strokes of daylight, then let me be clear, despair it is. But despair is just one bus stop on this long ride home, and I won't stay shattered here for long. Love that. So, when being asked to contribute something of my own, first of all, because of that, and also because I just can't even write anymore, I'm just gonna sing something that I wrote a version of 20 years ago. 20 years ago. This is my version of America the Beautiful, little short version. So I gotta get my note. Okay, hope I can do it. America the beautiful, we stole each piece of land from natives who embraced us as we stepped upon the sand. Uh-oh. A travesty of brotherhood we foisted on their homes, as greedily we drove them out and carved into their stones. With almost all the natives gone, we sailed off for black gold. We whipped them senseless while they built the fortunes we now hold. America, America, thy name evokes ideals. But if we don't live up to them, what rotten fruits will yield? Thanks.
I don't love that you had to sing that song, and I immensely, immensely appreciate that you brought it to the program today. We have, just so you know, we do have a history of people singing on this program from time to time. So you are not the first, you will not be the last, and you are most welcome. Come sing anytime. Thank you. Amazing. Incredible. Well, folks, the Evergreen State College, so, so good to me in my career. And one of the best things that happened in my career was I hired the person um, who would follow me in that work and has soared far, far, far above the work I was doing there. And I knew she would, and I also had the exquisite joy of learning that she also was an amazing, amazing poet. And so in this year, it's been a joy also for Ansley Clark's debut collection to have been published and to be following that journey. And Ansley's collection is called Bloodline. It's incredible. I'll be putting that in the chat. And very appropriately, Ansley's going to be reading After the Election, Oakland Burns Down on page 51. It's a really good pairing with what Victoria has just shared.
Thank you, Sandy. And I just wanted to say about this poem, the whole collection I think is stunning. I love it so much. But I wanted to read this particular poem because when I first read it in the glass studio, I actually stopped in my tracks. I think I was like stirring a pot of something on the stove, and I literally stopped in my tracks and I let out one of those little poetry sounds that we all make, like an audible oh my God. And probably whatever I was cooking burned. But I think what strikes me about it so much is that it has this what Robert Bly calls a bottomlessness. And there's this feeling of endless sinking throughout the poem. There's like this long floating leap, and then it ends in this image, this extended image that is truly so stunning that, again, it's that ending image that made me stop in my tracks. And it's so, so relevant to the world right now. After the election, Oakland burns down. That night, I woke and wept for liberation and for a different ghost ship than usual, one not sunk this time by ice and greed, but extinguished by smoke and neglect. I switched on my bedside lamp to keep at bay the lack of light, which is different than discouraging the power of the dark. The dark provokes dreams. The dark fertilizes ground. The dark is my hand combing through my hair's unstarry night. A vote is not a siren, not a fire engine screaming to find a blaze in progress. A vote is a hand extended after smolder, after too much hate, after candidates said too little, too much, too late, conflagrates. I didn't vote to slap anyone in the face. I didn't vote to silence a people. To silence anyone cuts off the power to the lights, which, I repeat, is not the same as the necessity to enrich the dark. Never shut this window to even a senseless night. Stay open to the hands that reach out, look out for you like the forest ranger who lives alone for months in the watchtower under a single glass bulb, dangling, searching for the infant fires before the juniper trees burn their old growth down. Yeah, I can feel my heart kind of like leaping a little bit as I read that poem. And so I'm going to pair it with, it's so hard to pair a poem with a Sandy poem, but a new piece I wrote that's similar in that it's a piece, it's a pleasure list I wrote of daily, weekly pleasures for survival. And it's after I was reading The Glass Studio and I was also reading Gabrielle Calvo-Caressi's poetry as I wrote this. So I think they're all in conversation. List to remind yourself that you have a body. A round half lemon in a blue bowl. Heavy purple lilacs at night, the shadow fragrance. An eagle in a liquid swooping out of a tree and into an actual sunset over the ocean. This actually happened. You were sitting next to a woman you loved because she is so good at being quiet, and you wish you could more often be quiet. And your lover's focused quiet when he lifts your hips, soft breast cupped and spilling out of a hand. Not the actual moment, but the memory that slices through while reading an email about policy and budget cuts and the police and ICE. As always, the uncertain future crowds the day. Just remembering that you do have a lover when the day is a clock, where you are inside a little trap you yourself created. Someone saying, let the cards fall when you're worrying about whatever again, and when you're full of longing for a woman to touch your scalp, and you are hungrier than you let on. Thank you.
Okay, Ansley.
Pleasure to be here, Sandy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Because we are in the we're in the vicinity of each other currently. When I see you, can you please give me a copy of that poem? Oh my God, I love it. So beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Well, our next reader joins me every single week here on Cultivating Voices and has been just by my side through the whole journey with this book. It just wouldn't seem right to not have Don Krieger read. I really would be very remiss. So I'm really grateful he agreed to join us to read. He always joins us, but he doesn't always want to read when I ask. And I'm glad that you said yes. And Don's latest collection is We in America, and it's an ebook, and I'm putting in the chat the link where you can download the book for free. Thank you, Don, for really everything. We all would not be in this room without you.
Thank you, Sandy. This poem speaks for itself. Let no one stand alone, for Rachel Corrie. 1979 to 2003. The day I reconnected with evil again, driving south on I-5 to escape my own mini-series of headlines in Bellingham. The news from Rafah broke, horrific, like all history emerging, that she had died, clutching fistfuls of dirt that day when she stood her ground alone. Bulldozer and American college girl, a standoff, March 16th, 2003, and NPR reporting that evil had prevailed in not so many spoken words. Outside of Everett, I clutched the steering wheel and the story's every word harder than a car owner should, my knuckles turning whiter than history recorded. each mile driven bringing news of worse news as Western Washington blurred by. A Caterpillar D9R, now news, conflicting reports as the bulldozer operator keeps standing by his story that he never saw her, like all of history buried, a corpse shouldering its sturdy shot glasses of evil, like everything that history swallows and disowns to keep its truth underground, soiled. All these clutch plays for convenient blindness, the way a small girl might clutch a stolen chocolate bar in her not so naive fist. The news that Sunday afternoon, so disorienting that I couldn't own it after over all these years. And for days after, everyone I knew stood shell-shocked on the campus bricks, mourning that something so evil could befall upon an Olympia family, community in spring. We became history, unforgettable, tethered in those distorted budding days, and history would repeat weeks later when a friend, originally from Belfast, clutched his chair's armrests like the sides of a lifeboat to survive evil's swells just hours after speaking at her memorial, trying to keep the 80s news from Belfast at bay so as not to confuse everything he stood for from everything crumbling beneath Rachel's own sure feet. But he couldn't distinguish his own grief over Bobby Sand's sister, whom he loved, from this new history still fresh in his mind like butchered meat. He couldn't stand anything now resembling the girlish present, and clutching his mug handle, I witnessed the game unraveled by more than news while we drank strong Irish tea, his heart having been evil's good next door neighbor for far too long. He stood up alone, clutching his own singular history, weeping, wishing Rachel had made her story farther away from the news and from that man-made blade of evil. Let's let no one stand alone.
Oh, thank you so much, Don. I do have to say that I want to encourage all of you, for poets out there, maybe do for yourselves what I'm doing here. Create a reading where you hear other people read your poems, because it's quite moving, it's quite striking, and I'm hearing things in my poems I've never heard before, even though I've read them a million times. Well, not a million, you know what I'm saying. Yeah, it's extraordinarily moving. Those of you not familiar, Carolyn Wright pointed out to me, and she's in the room today. Thank you, Carolyn. Um, that the Glass Studio has not one, not two, not three, but four sestinas in the book, and Let No One Stand Alone was one of them. The form of the sestina being a very, very obsessive form. And in fact, another person in this room has written one of my absolute favorite sestinas in the whole world. That's Robin Becker. Hi, Robin. Um, yeah, okay. Oh, we go over to Ireland, to Limerick, and Limerick has been beyond kind to me, um, for so many reasons. It's where I first read my poems and met Edward O'Dwyer from Salmon Poetry, who connected me with Jesse Lendenny, and the rest they say is history. That's why we're all sitting here today, if not for having been in Limerick and met the poets at an open mic. And then I just want to amplify um, that Dor Seifer is the host now of What Was Not the Time to Be Silent. And I want to bring that detail into the room because in March of 2020, when my sister and I were looking to see if there were any open mics online, we found two. We found Kai Coggin's Wednesday Night Poetry, longest continuous running open mic in the United States at over 1800 weeks um, consecutively, and it did not break during COVID. And the other was Not the Time to Be Silent, and Dor was one of the hosts of that program. And Not the Time to Be Silent became what is now affectionately and so beloved out of Limerick called Lime Square Poets. It's award winning. The country of the Republic is supporting it through grants, and I'm so happy and I'm honored to call Dor my friend, fellow host and dear friend, whose debut collection came out this month, on Being Unable to Walk Through Walls from Revival Press. Thank you for being here, Dor, and thanks for blurbing the book and for all the ways that you've supported me, a million ways.
Thanks so much, Sandy. Yeah, thanks for having me here, and thank you for letting me read this poem. I feel a bit it's almost scary to read this poem because this is one of my favorite poems that you've written, and I heard you read it last year. Well, was it last year or this year last year in Limerick, and it was unforgettable. So I will try to do the poem justice, but
You'll do it justice.
but this is Gratitude Workshop, notebook number 12, 1991. For Lucy Brock-Broido and for Sandy too. She said, poetry is about demons and to trust the interior of ice. I ruminate over all the advice we must endure in this world. A precarious stack of dishes at the edge of the sink, or a game of midnight freeze tag in a field of no moon. She said, don't apologize. Don't explain. If 14 fish swim past, what does the 15th look like? The darkest hour of the recurring bruise. She said, court tension and risk. They don't exchange names. They don't even shake greasy hands. About doubt, it's terminal, more than a blessing. Forgiveness is another night of testimony. How is it you remain unmarried? I told myself it was the mattress. I had a bed. I did not lie. I find fire delectable and can sleep. She said, be careful not to be too good. So I pretend to fidget with some anger. In simplicity, the simple. Let the day bear out its breakdown of horoscopes, like coins that disappear into the glass face of a parking meter. All description must be revelation. I can forgive only the first gray hair, and in response to my longing, I burn the toast. So I thought a lot about what to read. And in the end, I picked a poem that was written after a workshop and after visiting the Limerick Gallery of Art. Space unoccupied is attention wielded. It tends to win. You compose neat space like the curtained house you grew in. My childhood home, circumscribed by bare windows over bumpered traffic. Supplanted ficus trees whose hollows never cave, stuffed with foam, like grouted walls. Fruit rots and falls, squashed berries, disgust underfoot. Your people worship light, though rain is always on their lips. My people blow through horns, tearing through breath, breaking while it's held. I constantly retrace my steps, attempt to find what I have lost. You pave clear images, stacked symmetry, counted syllables form Julienne language. I like cuts that lead into unknowns, wormholed. We both attempt to word the traces of a laugh, conjure circles on the surfaces of silence, replay a mimicry of life. Dark magic stains the page. We sketch the shadow. Empty space becomes light, finds a way. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful new poem. Thank you. Again, Door's book has just launched in Limerick, and you see in the chat the link to order there. And Door will be joining us on Cultivating Voices at some point in the future. I believe it might be September, but we haven't really negotiated all that yet. So be looking to hear from Door's collection in one of our new book showcases coming up. And of course, you can join Door and Lauren on Lime Square Poets any Thursday evening in Ireland. And if you're in the US, it's check your time zones, friends. In the West, it's noon. And of course, in the East, it's at I join at 3 o'clock. So thank you again, Door. We'll see you soon. Well, as I said, the Evergreen State College here in Olympia, Washington, which is where I'm joining you from today, because I've been doing some readings here during this month, has gifted me with so many things. And this Allison Arth and I met my very first year at Evergreen. I interviewed her to become a tutor in the Writing Center. That was September of 2001. I arrived at Evergreen just a week before 9/11 from upstate New York. So you can imagine what that was like. But we persevered through that incredible national experience, and students of mine and the tutors, they carried me all the way through my career. And the beauty of it is some of them became really good friends, and Allison is one of them. And Allison read in the at the Allison was scheduled to read with us at the Museum of Glass, and unfortunately she wasn't able to. And we also she also blurbed the book, and we also did a 7-part podcast on her amazing podcast with creatives called Little Oracles, and ours was called the Divination series, where we wrote poems in call and response to each other's poems and talked about how they were emerging in progress. If you'd like to watch that, I'm putting the link in so you can hear us talk about poetry, the craft of poetry, and a lot of other ridiculous things. So Allison, thank you so much for being here. Allison's going to be reading. I realize I've been remiss about, I'm so overwhelmed by everyone's readings. Allison's going to be reading a poem, Oracle, in honor of Little Oracles, and that's on page 75. Hello.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Sandy, this is such a delight. I'm so glad to be here to celebrate your work, to celebrate the Glass Studio's first birthday. What an honor, honestly. So these two poems that I'm going to read today, one of Sandy's, one of mine, got their start or were involved in some way in that divination series on Little Oracles, which, if you're interested in listening to it, it's everywhere you get podcasts and also at littleoracles.com. It was a tremendous experience to have these conversations with Sandy about poetry and the making of poetry. And So I'm going to share Oracle, which Sandy shared kind of as a beautiful capper to that conversation. And then I'm going to share a poem of mine called Articles of Incorporation, which got its start as part of that series. And I think they are in conversation with one another, interestingly, in kind of their mystical embodiment, I guess I'll say. So I'll open with Oracle, and then I'll go to Articles of Incorporation. And as Sandy said, it's on page 75 of the Glass Studio if you want to follow along. Oracle. Because in a deep translucence, you loved the circle of the bracelet around my wrist as if it were my body, it broke. But I forgive you for the miracle of everything you shatter. Now you stir here in the sheets next to me like a drink that desperately needs a mouth or a finger curling around the edge of its glass until it hurts. Only in a blink can I see inside the rim of who you are, darling. And I want to return your affection for a moment to the small girl who peers into the spin cycle of her mother's washing, who loves the movement of clothes against the quick circumference within the barrel, an unfractured yo-yo glowing over itself and back, who hopes her hands keep going. I love that poem so much, Sandy. It's just, it's so stunning in its fleetness, and it's just, it means a lot to me. It warms my heart. So now I'm going to read Articles of Incorporation. There is a short epigraph, prose epigraph at the beginning. Articles of Incorporation. In August 2019, Dr. Prabhata Ramani extracted 526 teeth of varying sizes, ranging from 0.004 inches to 0.6 inches, from the mouth of a 7-year-old boy. Even the smallest piece had a crown, root, and enamel coat indicating it was a tooth, she told Manvina Suri of CNN. The teeth you use now were stuffed up in your head before they descended, displacing the teeth you grew as a toddler, the ones that fell out and made you a quarter, your first ever capital. It turns out it's okay to sell yourself for profit so long as it's mystic, an economics of transubstantiation. Once bought, I imagine teeth rove all over. Garbage cans, your dad's dresser drawers, forgotten pockets, the ocean. Though sometimes you find them 30 years later, rattling around a blank plastic box, and you wonder, were you a caster, odontomancer, you diviner, you divined? What other life might you augur? Thank you.
I have to say, those 7 weeks that we spent together online I really feel like it was some of the most amazing conversations I've ever had about poetry with another human being. And I've had a number of them with people in this room. And because I can tell a few little stories here about the poems as well. I obviously decided I was going to do that. It's hard for me to resist. Is that that poem is a really old poem, actually, and it's a sonnet. It was written in um, on the campus of Harvard University when I was taking summer workshops with Lucy Brock-Broido. And she said, there is no way anybody should ever be able to use the word darling in a poem, but you pulled it off. So as you can tell from the poem that Dora read, with lines that were woven from things that Lucy had actually said in the workshop that summer in 1991, with throwaway lines that I found in that notebook. I call it a self-cento. That's kind of my way to talk about that form. Yeah, Lucy's really was very, very remains very instrumental to me. And also, I just want to acknowledge while I'm talking about Lucy that in the room today, there are a number of um, my former teachers and mentors. You know who you are. And because you're mentioned in the appreciation section of the Glass Studio. So thank you for being with me there at Wheaton, at Emerson, in Boston, um, and throughout my time so far. I am so deeply appreciative. Thank you, Allison, Arth. I look forward to our next collaboration, whenever that may be. Well, speaking of Boston, we're going to go to Boston right now, and we're going to get to hear from one of my best friends in the world, Sara Gambrill. And Sara Gambrill read in Old Saybrook at the reading in May. And Sara and I studied together in our MFA program at Emerson College. So it's just really sweet to have you um, always on the journey with me, and I'm really grateful. And
Thank you. Well,
Sara's going to be reading Properties of Glass, and that's on page, sorry, I didn't mean to catch up. Properties of Glass on page 76, if you're following.
well, right back at you, Sandy, as you would say. Um, yeah, I picked this poem because, well, I didn't read it the last time. So I wanted to pick a different one, and I like the sinuous form of it down the page, and I like the sibilance of it in places that kind of pretends danger, and I like that it's about, sort of prisons that we make for ourselves sometimes, and I think that's another maybe sub theme in the book, and I like how you get the double meaning of pain when it's read aloud in two places. So, Properties of Glass. We twine our way down the rock faces of the snaking Smith River. She assures me we are not anywhere a map can call home. We are not anywhere a map can comprehend. She guides us down a crude, curved road she's traveled many times before, but curved is too kind a word for the pattern I find our car threading. Road is too generous. When we land, awestruck, we stand outside underneath the stars, inside the black-blue bowl of night, while the river winds around us. I once trusted this woman I could not love. She had arrived years before from two worlds, the one she thought she understood, and the one snaking in front of her 10 times over. She chose neither, electing instead to stay pinned inside her glass cage. I tried to reach her, but the glass was too thick from where I stood inside my own, not comprehending what glass stood for. Breakable, unbroken, seamless, flat. We were double paned, and I could discern only from the other sides of both. Grim, foggy, wispy with seeds, that those antique panes had survived longer than the sum of us. The windshield now crusted with years of crushed insects, the Smith River now evidence of our undying endurance. So I do not write poetry. I write prose, and I chose something very short of mine to follow Sandy's that chimes with the theme of imprisonment, self-imprisonment. Going back to what I can't believe now, but seems a more optimistic time, which was the summer of 2020, when we thought we were just pulling out of the pandemic and getting out again. And there was an election coming, and there was a different time. Okay. So, pros warning. Bastille Day 2020. We sit at our favorite French restaurant for lunch on Bastille Day 2020 to celebrate our first time eating out since the pandemic. We've taken the day off from working from home. Although fully vaccinated, my husband and I feel cautious about breathing the same air as other people, conspiring to enjoy ourselves. We sit outside on a temperate, sunshot day in the shaded far corner of the patio, marveling at our release. Within minutes, a young woman is seated a few tables away. Her skin glows in the sun. She wears sleekly fitting black shorts, chic black sandals, a black translucent blouse with neon-colored flying saucer-like designs. But her hair, a deep orange burgundy metallic, and her matching sculpted eyebrows are most striking. She has emerged gracefully from her chrysalis of confinement. She looks around, at her phone, at the menu. She is asked by the waiter in French accented English if she would like a drink. Her movements and facial expression mime that she doesn't know if the person she is waiting for will want sparkling water, but she orders a bottle for the table. She also orders herself a glass of champagne. The waiter returns to serve a taste first, and she sips it. Her eyes close to express that it is just what she wants. She is careful not to finish it. A man arrives at her table. He wears the uniform of men working from home in summertime. Baggy tan cargo shorts and flip-flops, and a nearly colorless, collarless, rumpled top. He makes himself comfortable and listens to the specials. He says, "Gotcha," every time the waiter explains something on the menu. The woman bubbles to life after he arrives, eager to tell him all she's been doing since they last saw each other some time ago, in the before times. She shows him photos of herself swimming in waterfalls somewhere, recounts adventure after adventure until he takes a phone call, which lasts quite a while. They had ordered, and the first course is set before them. She waits for him. After he's disconnected, he explains he's on the clock, so he must take work calls. He removes his flip-flops and rests his bare feet on top of them for the duration of the meal. Her body is inclined toward him. He is sprawled back in his chair. He makes note of her hair. She tells him it took her 8 hours to get that color. Please tell me it was not for him.
Oh, you read that to me before I came out to the West Coast, and I was riveted by it then, but ooh, when
Well,
you're reading online, you have a different way of reading. So I think you should keep reading. Come online and keep reading.
anyway, thank you.
Thank you so much. That's Sara Gambrill, and yeah, I've known her since 1989. It's amazing. Well, our next reader I met at Poets on the Coast, which there's some other folks from Poets on the Coast in the room. I think this was incredibly instrumental women's writing retreat from hosted, conceived of, developed by Kelly Russell Agative and Susan Rich. And I really credit them for encouraging me to try one more time with Boats for Women to publish it. And it was that time that Salmon Poetry published it. And as a result of that, we have the Glass Studio as well. And I met Anya. Uh, it's a really epic story. We won't go into the epic story of even the meeting at Poets on the Coast. But I've loved her poetry ever since I first heard it, and I'm very happy that people, at least in the United States, and I think in Ireland also, because you publish in Ireland, that people are starting to understand the miracle of your voice and your poetry, and I'm really unbelievably pleased that you're part of the reading today. And Anya read at that reading that Ansley read at the Museum of Glass in Tacoma, Washington, just about a year ago today. And Anya's going to be reading the next open space on page 80. Thank you for being here.
I'm so glad to be here, Sandy. And I'm glad to celebrate your beautiful book. And I chose this poem because I think I need it right now, and I think we need it right now. And we have to find those places where we're speaking with healing, offering healing to one another as well. So this is the next open space. We think it's about our footing, planting the fleshy parts solid to ground, taking it one step at a time, whatever it is. I try to remember this as I comfort my sisters and brothers as they migrate to spaces that feel closed before reached. I have been there, outside in that dark that redefines dark, without words, raising my feet or voice, impossible. So yes, it is this dance that offers to turn us toward the next open space, teaching us there is so much more than what we perceive breathing under our feet, the ground rising, rising all around us like immaculate glass cities. Look up, always look up. Find the bird inside you and remember this about the next open space. There is always one more than one. There is always more than one. Yeah. It's been hard to choose a poem to pair with that. But I think there's something in this one that gets there a little bit. So I'm going to read a poem that I don't think Sandy has heard before, and it's called Blue, for my father. In the dream, we are together. I'm cooking soup at the stove. You have rolled yourself into the kitchen. It's late in your years, and we wander into one of those questions we never manage to answer. When I look at the color blue, and you look at the color blue, do we see the same color? Maybe, you say, considering. Sometimes it's late morning, I offer, through an old friend's window, or a lake cradling dusk pines. Others, it's the sweetness of an empty June hour, that open treasure chest. Once, for a whole year, blue was like a perfect round bruise. Another, it was the rarest of mountain flowers, spiked lupin, or tender, almost purple columbine. What do you say? I ask, stirring the soup. You seem to ponder. I go on. Sometimes blue is a kiss caught in glacier ice, or the color of lazulene sky against an orange blazing tree. And there are times I imagine being shipwrecked in the wide mouth of night. Or, I admit, I imagine my own body draped in your wheelchair. In the dream kitchen, you look at me. Blue, I continue, gentle as roadside chicory or a forest floor gone wild with flowering bells. Blue, rough as river stones, almost gray, almost bone. You're quiet. Blue as you, Hoyer lifted out of bed like a miraculous plucked fish, swaddled and hooked in the metal crank of a stork's beak. Blue, yes, your eyes, those summer spy pools, tinted with cerulean and sweet grass, with indigo, with that speck of light, that flash. I ask again, do we see the same color? Maybe it's the wrong question. The soup pot fills and fills. You, Father, glimmer on the surface of all water, you unfathomable sea. What do you say? I ask again. You answer. I say it is a doorway. Thank you.
Well, folks, you see, you heard why I have been mesmerized by Anya's poems ever since I heard them from 2013. And if we are fortunate in this world, we will see a collection from Anya in the next few years. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. That was really beautiful. And no, I hadn't heard that poem before, so I unprepared for my emotions with that. Thank you. My gosh. Well, our next reader is my dear friend Kate Flaherty. Kate Flaherty and I go back to the University of Nebraska. So, I mean, really, like all areas of my life are really represented in this reading today, and it's just I feel a little bit like I'm on that TV program. What was it called? Like This Is Your Life. It's like a little weird. And the thing is, I created it, so I created the program, so it's even weirder. Anyway, there's so many things I could say about Kate Flaherty. But all I'll just say is I love you. You're amazing. And I am so appreciative for you being on the journey with so many of the poems that I was writing in Nebraska that would become Boats for Women, and how you have been such a champion of the Glass Studio. And um, Kate read what she's going to be sharing with you today. Um, in Old Saybrook, came down from New Hampshire and read at the Old Saybrook reading. So thank you, my dear friend.
Thanks everybody for being here. I'm so excited to share this. When I got this book last year, I wanted to read it with intention. And at the same time I got the book, Sandy handed me a notebook full of letters that she'd written to me in 1993 as part of a writing project. So I hadn't seen those letters for decades. And so we just kind of knew it was going to be a project um, of me responding to Sandy's poems, and they had to be in places with stained glass. So that will explain the pictures that you see in the beginning, because it's where I live, where I am right now. And I also decided to call the project Cultivating Collaboration. So I'm super excited to share it with you guys. The premiere. So here goes.
Yeah, we're just waiting for Kate to share screen. So just everybody, just take a breath. Eat a cupcake if you have one. I actually have my little birthday cupcake here. So, oh, and I know what I'm going to do.
David Cassidy writes me a fan letter from the great painted bus beyond. From the pages of all those Tiger Beat magazines you purchased with your allowance, I became more like sugar with each poster you pulled from the centerfold staples. I never liked that my crotch was always pinned to the crease, that girls tugged at my sleeves, ripped off my clothes, and shredded what was left of me at my concerts. I was hoping to be a firefly that feasted on night flowers, leaving my scent behind with my original songs, the ones no one heard over the din of those pop hits that ABC's money moguls shoveled into my mouth. During boxed lunches on the set, I had to sign thousands of postcards to girls I'd never met. I was drowning Sandy in the fountain of teen idol fame, and I didn't know how to swim. Who does in that kind of water? So I vanished into those cheap newsprint pages of 16 magazine. I became a paper ghost, and only the drugs and sex told me that I was alive. What can I say? Why am I risking this from the great painted bus beyond to share with you? I think you know better than the lyrics to I Think I Love You. Every poem is a spotlight that shines the light back into your eyes. You need to keep them open to honest desires. Don't get caught beneath the undertow of the trapdoor's weight. Come on, you know how to escape, to get happy. You almost do it every day, except you act like it's your shadow side. You never let yourself fully embrace the miracle of you. I sang all those songs on those albums that I know you still sing when you are alone or driving with your sister in her van. I know you gave a private concert to Tara Hardy in your living room, that you have 2 microphones at the ready to practice when you feel inspired by songs you wore down the needles in your preteen bedroom to hear over and over. I wasn't ready for everything that came next, after the gold records and the show's opening credits dressed in mod. I should have shaken off that Partridge Family tree sooner. But this isn't my ending, Sandy. This is your beginning. So come on, stay happy. Swallow my songs, my prayers for that girl long ago who loved me as no one could. Retire all those faded fan magazines. You know you are happier when you are unlocked, unleashed from inside the glass house, where you've been waiting your whole ludicrous life to sing. The next poem I'm going to read is compiled from 3 months of letters that Sandy wrote me in 1993 from the Mill Coffee Shop in Lincoln, Nebraska, where we both were graduate students at the university. You'll note that Hilda Raz makes an appearance. She was the editor of Prairie Schooner while we were there, a remarkable, wonderful, most generous person. And we are so lucky that she was a part of our life and still is. And there's also an appearance from KJ, who, along with Robin, they were also graduate friends of ours who are now professors of English at Loyola Marymount. So here goes, Before I Forget. From the blustery mill, home to the daily displaced and seekers of Java. Lincoln, Nebraska, 1993. Dear Kate, it's fairly hot, but for some reason, sitting on the mill's loading dock is kind and always provides a nice sea breeze, as if it knows that's what true docks are for. I started reading Night, read the foreword, fell asleep through no fault of the book, and started to dream. Very vague dreams. It was strange this late in the day. I would characterize today as the day of the zombie. The same people keep walking past the dock, hour after hour. I think the people I recognize but can't name must all work in the library. I have felt somewhat unglued all day. KJ is here reading personality theories. Iced tea, he says. You must have gotten paid. The sun keeps creeping in and out, so I can't decide where to situate myself. KJ tells me, as a man from the plains, he can smell the rain. We're in for a hell of a storm. It keeps getting degrees darker. Almost twilight out now, or so it seems. I'm thinking about what color something is if it's clear, like glass or rain or water, or better yet, rain falling into a glass full of water. I find it unbelievable air has no color. KJ quotes Lyotard, "Lack is itself an existence." Which leads me to another phenomenon. I think it is much easier for us to be unhappy than happy. It's what leads me to gloat in my own paralysis, let plants die, pay no bills. Our lives in the long term read like maps of transitions. It's the present, the actual occurrence of those shifts in fault lines that's difficult to adapt to. Hilda has just parked in front. This little kid with big red rubber boots says, "Hi, Gail," to kill Hilda as she gets out of the car. "I'm Hilda," says Hilda. Hilda waves. She says she could hear me sighing as I wrote. I realize I've done myself a great disservice. I'm entirely sick of pain. Everyone feels restless or needs therapy. These are not necessarily bad things. The sun will keep its promise. Thanks for listening. It's something you do so well. Love, Sandy.
So there you go.
Oh my gosh, I really, really was not prepared for that. Oh my gosh. Oh my God. All the cameos, Hilda. Oh my God. It's Sherry who's here. I saw other people in the pictures who might be here. Oh my gosh, Kate, thank you so much. Well, we're gonna do one of our giveaways right now in honor of it seems like you raided my closet of all my Partridge Family memorabilia also to create that, by the way. Just saying. Well, we're going to give away, gift away, the artist who created the broadside of David Cassidy, writes me a fan letter from the Great Painted Bus Beyond, is actually here in the room. Ray Zill. Ray's working at the library at Evergreen, actually, right now. But this is the broadside. It's all hand set letterpress. And this, of course, is the iconic, the bus of the Partridge Family. This was created for the Glass Studio. It's one of only 25 prints. So I'm gonna pull a name out of the hat. I've been writing everybody's names in the squares, and I'm not gonna look, and I'm gonna just pick a name out. And here's who's gonna be winning the broadside. Look, my collaborator for West East Bicoastal Poets of the Pandemic, Lynn McGee. I'll be getting that to you. Thank you.
No way.
No way. Way. I'm going to hand deliver it to you at some point with my lunchbox in hand.
Wow, I'm so honored. Thank you so much.
Thank you. As I said, and Lynn's new collection has also just come out. Lynn will be with us in a future Cultivating Voices new book showcase as well. So congratulations to you. All right, folks, we're doing so well, staying on time. I'm going to read the final poem in the Glass Studio, which is one of the title poems, The Glass Studio. Thank you, everyone. I'll thank you all after I read The Glass Studio. And this is on page 84. The Glass Studio. Glass eyes, glass flowers, glass attics and floors. Everything is made of glass. Glass hands on display, reaching for the glass ceiling at the department store. Glass water from the glass water tower in glassy New York City. Glass watch face, glass clock face, and sometimes even the glass minute and second hands. The glass ocean with glass crustaceans and starfish. The ocean's beach glass grumbling to shore to become sand once again. Up the glass staircase, the glass stars blink their luminosity. Glass water in water glasses, glass teeth and tongue provoke the glass heart with its percussive glass beat. A glass voice breaks the glass bottom boat, the glass oar, propeller, and rudder to the rescue. Glass confections and glass cakes behind glass, glassed fixtures of all shapes and sizes hanging from glass ceilings in the glass house. But we won't go there again, won't ask for a glass bottle return from a long abandoned glass deposit. No glass handouts or handshakes here in this glassy room. I use a glass pen to scribe in glass ink on a sheet of paper, glass thin, like my father used to do in the glass studio. I still see his black Sharpie markings eroding on the glass. I grip the glass writing implement much as I would the glass cutter to score sheets of glass in the studio. And now the glass sun breaks open behind the glass lighthouse, while off in the glassy distance, the glass studio waits for an opening with a glass key. The glass stoplight turns only to green. In the glass morning, all the glass rules break all our glass histories through the glass centuries. Hour after glass hour, the sand in the hourglass keeps immaculate glass time in every glass town and city as the glass birds croon their glassy bird songs, their fragile glass wings flapping in the glass wind. Now go home to your glass house and unpack every glass mirror you forever hoped to break. Well, folks, it has been quite an afternoon for me. We're going to do one more gift away, and I'm going to gift a signed copy of The Glass Studio out of my cap from Cork or all your names, and I'm going to pick that name here. It's Jude Dubin. Jude comes every single week to Cultivating Voices. Oh my gosh. Thanks, Jude. I'd be so happy to send this to you. Be so happy to send this to you. Well, everybody, this has been quite quite a day for me to be hearing everyone read and to be in the room with so many beloveds of the book and people who have supported me throughout my journey with poetry. I'm so grateful. And of course, I'm grateful to all of today's readers. I want to mention two of our readers, unfortunately, weren't able to be with us today, but they also blurbed the book, and that was Liz All and Gustavo Hernandez. We send our good wishes and healing out to them. But I want to thank our readers for today. Eamonn Lynskey, Janet MacFadyen, Victoria Larkin, Ansley Clark, Don Krieger, Dora Seifer, Sara Gambrill, Anya Kirshbaum, and Kate Flaherty. Would you please unmute and show your appreciation for just these extraordinary artists and human beings?
For reading. Thank you.
Bravo! Bravo!
Hey. So beautiful.
Wonderful.
Well, I want to, of course, thank the tech crew. Don Krieger served as both the tech crew and one of our illustrious readers today. And I want to remind you that we just march right on into March next week, March 2nd. It's our Poets Focus on the Body. And we're going to be featuring the editor of Small Harbor Publishing, Alice Blevins, with her new book. as well as the editors and select contributors of the anthology published by Small Harbor Publishing, Braving the Body, plus an open mic with all of you. So that is next week. Bring yourselves, bring all your bring your bodies of poems to the program. And we also, of course, in March, it's Women's History Month here in the United States. We will have our new book showcase. And I want to just also let you know that it is the 5th year anniversary. It's finally arrived in March. So we'll be celebrating together. Hopefully all of you with us will return on March 23rd, right before we go to AWP, the Associated Writing Programs, and do an off-site reading in collaboration with Swim Every Day, Mom Egg Review, Perugia Press, and Whale Road Review. We'll be having our first ever AWP event featuring Cultivating Voices. Again, I want to thank all of you profoundly for your support today, but all the days that you've supported Cultivating Voices, and of course personally supporting me in this journey with the Glass Studio during its pre and current and publication time. And I want to also encourage you in all the ways that I do at the end of every program. I want to remind you all, we are in extraordinary times. They are very difficult times. I mean, Anya read that poem from the next open space, and that poem to me really was an anthem to reach out to people, to remind us to persevere and find art and beauty where we can, and be in community with each other whenever we can. These poetry readings have taken on for me an entirely different dimension since January, and I know they will continue to do so. So I'm ever so grateful. So folks, as I always say, take as I say every week, take very good care of yourselves this week. Take exquisite care of your beloveds that you know and those that you don't. We all really need to be in support of each other, in support of community. And as Kate demonstrated, Sara, all of our beautiful readers today, look what happens when we keep writing. Keep doing it, my friends. I look forward to seeing you all next week. I'm Sandy Yannone, your host of Cultivating Voices, live poetry, sending all the love. Be well.